Hello? So, ladies and gentlemen, how about now? Can you hear me now? No? Can you hear me now? Because I see the mixture moving, so it means that the voice is on. Yes, I see that you can hear me. Dmitry still doesn't hear me, but probably since the ladies can, it should be a problem in your computer or something. Yes, yes. Oh, great. Nice. So, ladies and gentlemen, today we start a big section. Actually, I think most of the information that we're going to discuss today is quite common for you and familiar for you, but that's why I decided to skip those issues that might be obvious, and I will just draw your attention to some finer points of translation of certain verbs in certain mood, in certain aspect, the way we have to deal with this problem, and the problem can be sometimes dramatic in terms of expressing the adequate meaning. Sometimes translators fail to see the meaning of this or that particular verb, and as a result, we get the issue that the translation is not adequate. Okay, so I think we can continue, and just a minute. Yes. And the first thing that I want to draw your attention to would be the imperative mood of the verb. The imperative mood in technical language, in the technical English, is usually rendered by two elements. So the first element is normally the verb in the bare infinitive form, like do this or don't do this, or the verb let plus bare infinitive. If we look at the first sentence, let n be a constant, this is an imperative mood in technical translation, because normally we translate it by way of instructional command. Yeah? So we would say возьмем n за константу, или допустим, что n констант, или зададим n константой. So this kind of translations would be adequate for the imperative mood. If we look at the second sentence, don't expect to succeed at your first or even your second attempt, quite a pessimistic one, but I think this actually is a negative imperative, right? Не ждите, что вы добьетесь успеха с первой и, может быть, даже и со второй попытки. The imperative mood is quite easy for rendering. The only thing that I want to draw your attention is to the structure let plus bare infinitive, because this is normally not a challenge, but sometimes people can start thinking about the ways to translate. So another issue that we need to deal with when we talk about the verbs would be the verb to be. And to be, as you can see, may be multifunctional, and depending on the place of the verb in a sentence, it may express different issues. For example, here, the arrow must be reduced to 0. The result must be reduced value. You see, you have to understand what follows the verb to be. It may be, in both cases, this is the past participle, but we need to understand what this past participle refers to. In the first case, it refers to the verb. In the second case, it refers to the noun value. And the translation, as you probably can see here, would be absolutely different, right? So we would say that, well, why don't you translate these two sentences for me? Could you please translate these two sentences in one text so that the difference is clear, okay? Could you please translate these two sentences? The arrow must be reduced to 0. The result must be reduced value. So we will discuss the first 3 answers, okay? First 3 answers. Okay. Yes, I see people coming. Hello. It's nice. Well, yes, I got the first translation. Вероятность ошибки должна быть сведена к минимуму. Результат должен быть пониженного значения. I'm not sure that it should be a relative or possessive case here. Родительный падеж. I'm not sure that this is what is meant. Not пониженного значения, but a bit different. Let's look at Lera's translation. Количество ошибок должно быть сведено к нулю. В результате стоимость должна быть снижена. Yes. Ошибка должна быть сведена к нулю. Результатом должно быть уменьшенное значение. Right? Andrew, I think Lera's and Andrew's translations, they are what the message was about. Right? То есть ошибка должна быть сведена к нулю. If we translate it word for word, yeah, we have 2 more variants. Ошибка должна быть сведена к нулю. Ошибку необходимо устранить. Better сведена к нулю. Результатом должно являться снижение стоимости. Результатом должно оказаться уменьшение объема. В результате стоимость должна быть снижена. Yeah. So basically the meaning is that результатом должно быть сниженное значение. Right? So if we translate it word for word. And then stylistically we can adapt it like в результате значение должно быть снижено. Right. So when you translate the verb to be, please always keep in mind what the following past participle, especially when we deal with the passive voice, it may be not the passive voice, exactly as you can see from these 2 examples. Or, for example, here, the application is limited by the reliability of the operators. The result is limited applications of the operators. So again, the same case, you see that limited is the passive voice in the first case and is the categorizing epithet for applications in the second case. То есть применение ограничено надежностью аппарата, и результатом послужили ограниченные применения данного аппарата. Right? So, or like we have here, применение ограничивается надежностью аппаратуры, результатом является ограниченное применение этой аппаратуры. When we talk about the verb to be, we also have to deal with certain structures related to this verb. If you look at the following sentence, we are to take certain special steps to clarify the situation. You will see the structural combination of the verb to be with the infinitive, full-fledged infinitive with the particle to. And as you know, this meaning is synonymous to the meaning of have to, right? Or should or must, depends on the context. And I'm not making you translate this. I will help you. Мы должны предпринять некоторые определенные шаги для того, чтобы прояснить ситуацию, данную ситуацию. Yeah? Мы должны. So, sometimes these structures can present some difficulties if you deal with them in like multi-level and multi-clausal sentences, and this should be considered as well. Then, when we take the phrase due, and when the word due is prepositioned by the verb to be, this may be a kind of trouble for translation as well. For example, they paid due attention to the problem. Они уделили должное внимание данной проблеме. The experiment was stopped. The experiment was stopped due to the lack of reagents. Эксперимент был остановлен из-за нехватки реагентов. I need you to look at sentence number 3. sentence number 3. The scheme due to Professor A is of great interest. So this may be a bit uncommon for you. It may look a bit unusual. And this sentence, I would ask you to translate, okay? Could you please write your translation of sentence number 3? The scheme due to Professor A is of great interest. And as for sentence 4, this was due to the rise of temperature. I believe it's the same meaning. Это было обусловлено увеличением температуры, повышением температуры. But the last but one, the scheme due to Professor A is of great interest. Please, could you write your vision of the translation of this sentence? The scheme due to Professor A is of great interest. Схема, предложенная профессором А, схема созданная, схема составленная, схема профессора А, схема, предложенная профессором А. Эта схема представляет огромный интерес благодаря профессору А, схема, принадлежащая профессору А. Yeah, basically due to in this context refers to the ownership, but we cannot say принадлежащая профессору А, right? That's why схема, предложенная профессором А, представляет большой интерес. Yes. Well, I'm glad to see that you know the structure, most of you do, and we're ready to continue. And the next, эта схема, согласно профессору А, представляет большой интерес. Схема, созданная профессором А, очень интересна. Схема профессора А представляет огромный интерес. Yeah, absolutely. So the meaning of ownership should be rendered, and here it depends on the choice of the words that you have and on the stylistic restrictions of the sentence. And normally it is translated like схема, предложенная профессором А. Yeah. So the next issue that we need to deal with, this is the issue of the infinitive. Oh, indefinite. I'm sorry, of the indefinite tenses. And here we will brush up everything. Starting with the present and finishing with the future indefinite. Yeah? So only some things that might be uncommon or kind of peculiar, I'm telling you, because the way to translate present indefinite, past indefinite, future indefinite, I'm sure everybody is aware of. So let's look at these 3 sentences. The above assumption holds in every situation. Вышеупомянутое допущение действительно в каждой ситуации. So, this is just the structure which is really typical in technical English. And you see that some assumptions, some beliefs, some ideas, they may hold. And the structure is normally translated like действительно. Then sometimes, well, not sometimes, but in 100% of cases, if you have a formula, you render it with the present indefinite. Yeah. So I will give you 1 minute to read sentence 2 aloud for yourself, and then I will do 2, and you will be able to compare your reading with mine and see the way it can sound. Yeah. So please, 1 minute, read sentence number 2 to yourself. So, my version. By inspection of equation 2, if C equals 0, then D equals 0, and the criterion is not satisfied. So, present indefinite is used in reading formulas. Then, if we deal with the future indefinite, in technical language, in very many cases you can see the discrepancy between shall and will. So in common language, shall has almost disappeared in the meaning of future, so has it in technical language. So shall normally is rendering the meaning of obligation, and he shall conclude that balance is in favor of our example should be translated not like он придет к заключению, but the meaning would be он должен прийти к заключению. And we will say more about such kind of a mistake. One more thing that I want to draw your attention to is that will occasionally in technical language may denote a volition, желание. Yeah? So then we will say more about such kind of a mistake, may be rendered as теперь мы бы хотели больше рассказать о такого типа ошибки. So you have to be careful with this future indefinite grammar tenses in the rendering of the meaning. Please double check whether obligation with the verb shall is meant or volition with the verb will is meant. Now let's turn to passive voice. Okay, passive voice can be rendered by several ways, and I need you just to write your versions to translate the underlined phrases. Okay, so don't translate all the sentences, only underlined phrases. For example, which method is preferred depends entirely on circumstances. Modern architecture is characterized by simplicity of line, and the advantage of this technique over others was recognized by many scientists. Please write the translation of the underlined parts. Okay, is preferred, is characterized, was recognized. Of course, the translation of these parts should agree with the general image of the sentence, right? If the subject is in the plural, then of course the verb should be in the plural. Please jot down your translation of these three phrases underlined. Более предпочтителен, характеризуется, признается. Предпочтителен, характеризуется, было признано. Будет выбран, характеризуется, принимается. Предпочтителен, характеризуется, был признан. Какой метод является предпочтительным, полностью зависит от обстоятельств. Окей. Характеризуется, была признана. Была, like, преимущество, no? Является предпочтительным, характеризуется, было признано. Предпочтителен, характерно, был признан. So what we have? Yes, является предпочтительным, является более предпочтительным, right? Предпочтителен, yes. The second thing would be характеризуется, absolutely. And the third one could be было признано, был признан, признавался, yes. So you see that we have several ways to translate the passive voice. That may be reflexive verbs in Russian, характеризуется, признается. It may be kind of short adjective, yes, предпочтителен, and it may be impersonal structures, признают. Yeah? Многие ученые признают, или это преимущество признают, not in this case, but I mean in general. What difficulties we can face when we translate passive voice? For example, if you look at the first sentence, the work is often referred to in special literature. The challenge here deals with the fact that we have two prepositions together. The work is often referred to in special literature. So in this context, quite easy to differentiate and translate, but if you get a sentence with a lot of clauses and a lot of prepositions, sometimes translators fail to differentiate between the prepositions and understand where it refers to, right? So here, to refers to the word referred, and in refers to the word literature. If you look at the second sentence, wood is much experimented upon and worked at research institutes. This sentence deals with the second issue or challenge that we may have when we translate passive voice structures. The challenge is that we have one subject and several predicates, several verbs in the passive voice, which are referred to one and the same subject. And in English, it sounds natural, but whereas in Russian, it may sound awkward if you translate it preserving the structure. So you cannot say над деревом совершается очень много экспериментов, but in this case, и работают, да, в исследовательских институтах. You can say, but normally, when you have two predicates referred to one subject, you better repeat the subject when you translate them, okay? So, for example, if you look at the third sentence, you can say, программа должна быть разработана, ее должны прокодировать, протестировать, а затем должны быть составлены соответствующие документы. So, it's okay if you repeat the subject or at least substitute it with a pronoun. So please remember this, you will need this information when you deal with your home translation. Let's look at the next two sentences, the next pair of sentences. This is affected by heating and this is affected by heating. So these two passive voice structures are very often mixed up. Please don't mix them up, okay? If we deal with affected, it means это приводится в действие или вводится в эксплуатацию путем нагревания. Это приводится в действие нагреванием. And this is affected, it means на это влияет нагревание. So you have to be careful with the choice of the verb. Okay? Please remember that. Yeah, это осуществляется нагреванием, на это влияет нагревание. I'm a bit speeding up, ladies and gentlemen, okay, because I have a little less time than we usually have today, but I'm sure to explain everything that we need. So, the next issue could be negative verbs. As for the negative verbs, in technical translation, except for the common structures, their views did not coincide in many respects. Их точки зрения не совпадали по многим вопросам. We can also have a negation before a noun, which should be translated with a negative verb. Аксиомам не требуются доказательства, но теоремам требуются. Yes? Require no proof. I believe you know this, but I just need to draw your attention to this. And especially if you translate from Russian into English, sometimes translators fail to remember about this kind of structures. There may be quite tricky sentences like this, for example, this negative one. We do not take these factors into consideration, not because they are not important. So you see, we have double not, but it doesn't mean that we have double negation. The meaning, just the meaning requires this, right? If you look at the meaning of the sentence, you will see that the idea is мы не принимаем эти факторы во внимание не потому, что они не важны. Yes. So you have to take care and be careful with all the structures and differentiate what actually is meant by every negative particle. Yes, like I said. Or there may be double negation in this kind of phrasing. The reaction is not unlikely to occur under such conditions. So, minus by minus equals plus, right? If you look at this statement, the meaning would be positive. То есть в большинстве случаев данная реакция протекает в таких условиях. Yeah, is not unlikely. So we translate it positively. Or they never failed to obtain satisfactory results. Again, we have double negation. Они всегда были способны достичь или получить удовлетворительный результат. Right. So, in this kind of structures, we better use antonymous translation. Okay? Opposite translation. Now let's turn to the group of perfect tenses. And as you can see, again, very easy examples. Present perfect, after we have answered this question. Past perfect, before the sample was tested, it had been carefully dried. Or future perfect, by the end of the year, the plan will have been fulfilled. So, when you translate this kind of structures in technical language, it is recommended to introduce the word уже in the Russian text. Like, for example, the first one. После того, как мы уже сможем ответить на данный вопрос. Или перед тем, как образец был подвергнут испытанию, он уже был тщательно просушен. К концу года план уже будет выполнен. It's not a must, but it's just a recommendation to highlight this action, because the author should have a particular interest, particular goal to use perfect tenses, and we have to render this into Russian. As for continuous tenses, again, there may be some difficulties with rendering continuous passive. For example, it is usually easiest to rationalize the cost of that which is already being done. So, того, что уже выполняется. Тех работ, которые уже делаются. Yes? Данное исследование проводится под руководством профессора N. So here again you can see that we deal with the continuous passive, but I'm sure that this is not anything uncommon. As for perfect continuous, again, there should be a good reason for using that. And again, we better introduce some extra vocabulary in Russian. For example, мы наблюдали за данной реакцией уже с 10 часов. Или мы уже наблюдаем за этой реакцией с 10 часов. So, and the final block dealing with the modal verbs. Here, I've just given you examples to refresh your idea of the modal verbs. And I think I will be translating them on my own. We can readily rearrange the constituents of the system. Мы можем легко перегруппировать элементы, содержательные элементы данной системы. Tasks may be performed by two individuals when one should suffice. Задачи могут быть выполнены двумя сотрудниками, когда одного и, может быть, когда одного и достаточно. The system analyst must learn to distinguish between real problems and symptoms. Системный аналитик должен научиться разграничивать реальные проблемы и симптомы. These questions need not be addressed at all. So here I just need to draw your attention to the sentences, because here we have the verb need, which in technical language is usually used in its modal meaning, in its modal form. So, for example, need we use all the pseudo operations? Нам нужно использовать все эти псевдооперации. This view, or these questions need not be addressed at all. Again, modal meaning, you see? We don't use any auxiliaries like do or did or does or whatever. We use need as a modal verb in 90% of cases in technical translation. Please remind this too, okay? This view ought to be accepted. I believe that's quite all right. This is just synonymous to the verb should. And now translation challenge for you. So I have one and the same sentence with different modal verbs. Let me read them out for you. And while I'm reading, I need you to translate only the modal verbs. Okay, only the modal verbs. So must, are to, have to, may, should be translated in one text by you and jotted down in our chat. So the first one, and please translate, okay? Applications must be preceded by research in modeling. Applications must be preceded by research in modeling. Number 3, applications are to be preceded by research in modeling. Number 3, applications have to be preceded by research in modeling. And number 4, applications may also be preceded by research in modeling. So you see that here we've got different meanings. And the modal verbs, they help us to express this difference. Please write your translation only of the modal verbs, okay? Of the modal verb must, of the modal verb are to, of the modal verb have to, and of the modal verb may, okay? I see. Обязаны. Yes. Applications must be preceded. То есть применение обязано или должно быть предварено исследованиями в моделировании. Right? Должно, обязано. Are to be preceded. Обязано, нужно. Again, должно. Yes. Have to, нужно, должны. And may, like permission, могут. Yeah. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, sorry for that. It was a trap because the first two sentences, they have very, very close shade of meaning. And I'm afraid all the three of them should be rendered with должны. То есть применения должны быть предварены исследованиями в моделировании. Yes. Yes, необходимо, чтобы, нужно, могут быть. Обязаны, должны, должны, могут. Yes, some people got it. Typed several times должны. Yeah, true. So, if we look at the next ones, for example, the following points shall, however, be mentioned. If you remember before, I paid attention to the future indefinite shall. But here, shall, as I have already told you, means the modal. The modal has the modal meaning. То есть следующие пункты должны, однако, быть упомянуты. So shall, in most cases, means должен. As well as should in the past, right? Следующие пункты должны были, однако, упомянуты, быть упомянуты. As for will and would, the meaning of volition is preserved in its modal structure. Я направлю мои критические ремарки, или я хотела бы адресовать мои критические ремарки автору статьи. The same as like I would, я бы хотела. Yes, so it's like double mention to that. Please pay attention to these structures. Again, with the verb will, molecular solvent will not remove fluorine from organic compounds. Under such conditions, the reaction would not proceed. The ideal would contain things which have intrinsic value. So, in this case, modal verbs may denote several. May denote several ideas, and in the first case, молекулярные растворители не удаляют. Yeah. So in technical language, I'm sorry to call this slide modal verbs. It shouldn't have been called this way, but in this case, will not remove just denotes the regular action in the present. Не удаляют флорин из органических соединений. Or under such conditions, the reaction would not proceed. При таких условиях данная реакция не будет протекать или не протекает. The ideal would contain things which have intrinsic value. Идеал содержит аспекты, у которых есть внутренняя такая характерная ценность. So, as you see, these are not the model meanings. These are the meanings of routine, present simple usage. Yes? And you can come across these issues very often. Еще раз, ребят, вот это важно, да? Will и would очень часто означают действие, аналогичное или синонимичное настоящему простому. То есть, хотя у нас есть и will просто показывает регулярность, обычно. Да? Имейте в виду, когда переводите, здесь очень часто допускаются ошибки. То есть, will не всегда переводится как будущее время, не всегда переводится как хочу, I will address, да? А иногда will переводится просто как настоящее простое. Не удаляют, не протекают, или содержат и так далее. И will, и would. So, just one more thing to draw your attention to would be modal verbs plus complex infinitives. For example, some corrections must be made in the program, some corrections must have been made in the program. Must be made должны быть внесены в программу и должно быть были внесены. So, would you type for me pluses if you know the difference between these structures? Everybody, please do this. I need to know if I need to dwell upon this issue or if I can just go through it quickly and you all know this. Do you know the difference between must be made, must have been made? Those who know, please type plus and I will see who knows and who doesn't. Or the route may be followed. This route may have been followed. Yeah? Do you know the difference? Can you translate them? Just a plus if you can. Yes? I will be counting to see if all 32 people know it or no. 31. Yes, 3, 4, 5 people know the difference. 6. Is that all? Others don't? 7. Okay. So only 1/5 knows the difference. So when we have a modal verb with a simple infinitive, like must make, must be made, must here refers to its basic meaning, должен. Yeah, some more people remember. If we have modal verb plus complex infinitive, like perfect, must have been made, then must has another meaning, not должен. Должно быть. It's like probability, yes? Возможно, должно быть. The same with may be followed. Данный маршрут, данному маршруту можно следовать в реакциях, да? И данному маршруту, возможно, следовали в реакциях. Objects of stone might have been traded. Предметами из камня, возможно, торговали, перевозя их на большие дистанции. Yeah? The same holds true with could have, ought to, but the meaning of these verbs are a bit different. So, in these sentences, you will have this kind of sentences in your home translation. And this will be clear for me to see if you know, if you feel the difference or not. I will translate the sentences for you, and again, I will have short break before my translation so that you can check yourself and see if you can do it as well. So, sentence number 1. Your translation, please translate it for you, and then I will do the same. My translation. некоторые коррективы должны быть внесены в программу. Sentence number 2, please your translation. Некоторые исправления или коррективы должно быть были внесены в программу. I think I have translated next too as well. Let's look at the judging. Judging from its position, the tablet could have belonged to level 2. Okay, please your translation. Судя по ее положению, табличка могла бы относиться ко второму уровню. Then, he ought to have attended the meeting. Your translation, please. Ему следовало бы посетить это собрание. But we know that he hasn't. They need not have carried out the test once more. Please, your translation. They need not have carried out the test once more. So my translation. Им не нужно было проводить данное тестирование еще раз. Then, this line should have been put into operation long ago. Your translation. And mine. Эта линия должна была быть введена в эксплуатацию еще давно. And the last sentence. System problems that exist today should have been solved a year or two ago. Your translation? Системные проблемы, которые существуют на сегодняшний день, должны были быть решены уже год или два назад. Yes. So I hope your translations matched mine. Maybe it differed a little bit, or I hope they were better than mine. And I hope you remember the difference between these tenses. If you need some explanation or some rules, please write it to me in the chat that I need more explanation of the structures, and I will send you some material to our chats. Okay, just write to me in the chat here that you need more information, and I will send you some. So you've got quite a lot of sentences for translation in the first exercise to do at home, and a text in the second exercise. Sorry, it's called number 3 for some reason. So only 2 exercises for your homework. As usual, you have the deadline up to Sunday night, Sunday evening, so that I can check it on Sunday evening. Please send your translations. And again, as I said, it's good if you could follow the challenge rules with the sentences and with the text first translated within 30 minutes. Look up the dictionary only 3 times and see how far you can go with the sentences and with the text. And then do the editing, because this is the real algorithm of work of a professional translator, and you need to develop it and follow it. Okay? So, I believe this is all we need to finish today now. Next time, we have 2 more classes left. And I think irrespective of the fact that we have some May holidays, we will continue our streaming and doing our exercises, but probably we will finish our course not in the end of May, but probably in the middle of May. Okay? So see you next Wednesday, same time, and I'm waiting for your translation. I hope this information was useful, and I hope that my streaming and my explanation was not too fast, and you had some time to absorb and digest what I have given to you. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good evening, good night, and see you next Wednesday. Goodbye.